The main character of the story, Lucas, kneels in tears before his wife, Bella. He begs her to agree to a divorce. Bella, sitting relaxed in her chair, smirks contentedly at his humiliation and agrees to the divorce. She pushes the man with her foot and asks what he can offer her in return for a divorce. Lucas barely holds back the tears welling up in his eyes. He bites his lips from this humiliation. His life is not going well, and the reason for this is his family, especially his hated father. The old man drinks or gambles all day long and raises his voice at his now grown-up son. After his mother's death, Lucas lived with him because he was his only family, although the man did not pay any attention to his son. Lucas is forced to take on a lot of part-time jobs in addition to his office job to avoid going broke. He also works as a waiter in a diner to support himself. One day he sees a family, a father and a young son, who come into their diner. The child is mischievous and spills water. The father turns to Lucas for a towel or napkins. Despite the fact that the child does not realize the inconvenience caused, the father does not yell at him but takes care of him. He realizes that he envies such family closeness in other people. At home, the father, drunk once again, asks to lend him 10 million won. Lucas is shocked by this request since, for him, this is a lot of money. He tries to reason with his father, but he promises to return the loan in double the amount. He talks about a new currency that is coming out that is going to change the future completely and that he wants to invest in. Lucas replies that hard-earned money is more important to him than a dubious chance to make money. The father does not want to hear any excuses. He admits that he has always been a hopeless drunk and raised his hand against his son. However, now he asks Lucas for another chance to change. The father asks for this so desperately that tears come to his eyes. Lucas is annoyed, but he cannot refuse his father and eventually agrees to his request. But he wants too much to save their family, to try to make it normal. He wants to trust his father one last time and lends him money. He actively thanks Lucas, hugs him, and promises that his son will not regret it. However, his joyful cries do not inspire Lucas with much hope for success, and for good reason, since very soon Lucas's last relative will also depart to another world. He holds his father's funeral, and thoughts about the currency he bought fade into the background. Lucas's father died in a car crash. Experts say he lost control of his car due to rain and died at the scene. Lucas feels sad about losing his last family member, but at the same time, he feels liberated. With mixed feelings, he spends his leisure time drinking, just as his father had done not long ago. Left alone, he reflects on the strangeness of his life. On the television, he watches while having dinner an interview with a young man. Despite his young age, he has already achieved great success and works in the investment sector. Lucas wonders if this big success is buying a house or something else. However, it turns out that it involves large assets amounting to 4 billion Korean won, which makes Lucas cough. The host asks the young man what he invested in, and he reveals that he chose Bitcoin, the very currency Lucas's father spoke of. Lucas puts two and two together and realizes that the man on screen got rich doing something he didn't believe in. He looks at his phone lying on the table, wanting to make sure he heard everything correctly, and loads up his online wallet. The host reflects on how profitable it would be to invest in Bitcoin at the very beginning of its journey. The interviewee is sure that no one expected such a rapid increase in price, but if someone had invested in it at the time Lucas's father did, his investment would have grown 2,500 times. Lucas has a huge sum of money in his account, and he almost loses consciousness, unable to believe what he sees. The rise in the price of Bitcoin has driven many around the world crazy, and Lucas feels like he is barely holding on. He has 25 billion won in his account, which is 2,500 times more than his initial investment. Lucas spends the entire evening in shock, constantly checking his online wallet. To clear his head, Lucas rides his bike outside despite the chilly weather. Even after some time, he still can't believe that he has more than 20 billion won in his account. At home, he can't stop checking the market price, which is changing at an incredible speed, so he decides to change the environment. The amount in his account increased by several hundred million overnight. Lucas can't decide whether he should sell his assets now because he already has a huge amount of money. He returns to his dilapidated home, torn apart by contradictions. He reflects that since he has been frugal all his life, he will be able to be patient, but curiosity is stronger than him, and Lucas decides to check his savings once again. He prays in disbelief, covered in sweat, because the amount changes, once again. During the time he went to clear his head, his assets increased by another 2 million won, meaning he now has 2 billion won. Despite his increased wealth, Lucas still goes to work in the office. The head of the department to which the hero belongs is thinking at a meeting about the company's potential clients. Company employees discuss the possible risks of collaborating with a clinic located in Busan. The department head assumes that someone from the group will need to be sent to Busan on a business trip. Apart from Lucas, no one takes the initiative in this matter. Everyone looks away. The department head tries to find out if Lucas is sure because he looks very tired, but he just spends all his time studying his assets. So Lucas says everything is fine. The head of the department decides that Lucas needs another person to help him. Then Sue, one of the most beautiful and popular girls in the company, volunteers to go with the hero to Busan. Lucas's colleagues look at her, dreaming of spending time together. Other male employees immediately start shouting that they also want to go on a business trip, but the boss decides that 2 people are enough, and Lucas and Sue will go to Busan. The heroes set off by car to their destination to resolve business issues. Sue says she enjoys driving the car her brother sold her last year. Busan is Sue's hometown, and if before she often went home, now she has a lot of work and sports on weekends, so there is no time. They chat for a while, and Lucas wonders what he should do with his life now that he has a lot of money. Thought Kearney is leisurely, and there is pleasant conversation between Lucas and Sue. When they stop to take a break from the road, Lucas buys the girl a coffee. He is surprised that his colleagues are so eager to discuss work-related issues with Sue, and she thanks Lucas for his help. Sue shifts uncomfortably and looks away, her cheeks flushing. Finally making up her mind, she approaches Lucas to see if he wants to go shopping with her that evening. Sue hasn't been shopping for a long time, and she still has something to talk about. Lucas considers her offer but decides that a distraction would be nice, so he agrees. Later, the 2 of them go shopping. The first thing they do is head to a clothing store and look at business suits. Lucas, who is no longer used to going to stores, does not understand why he cannot order the same thing online but at a better price. Sue suddenly offers Lucas help in choosing and buying a suit, and he is surprised by such an offer. The clothes are a kind of bribe because the girl has an awkward request. Lucas has enough money for shopping, so he demands that Sue stop delaying the awkward conversation. Blushing furiously, Sue searches for words and finally asks Lucas to act as her boyfriend in front of her parents. He is stunned, but Sue explains that her younger sister already has a partner, and her parents are pushing Sue into a relationship. Blushing at such an unexpected request, Lucas tries to comprehend it, but he still agrees to help his colleague. In Seoul, the evening, they go to a restaurant. Sue's parents are very happy to meet their daughter's chosen one. They are polite to Lucas, make jokes, and try to please him. They wonder if the heroes work for the same company, and Lucas confirms this. Sue's mother is curious about how they became friends, and Lucas then explains that they bonded when he taught the girl the basics of their job. The parents are satisfied with this answer, and they continue their peaceful meal. Lucas, however, recalls a completely different emotional dinner with his ex-wife's relatives. They were negative and aggressive towards him, raising their voices. They also asked a lot of questions about the hero's parents who had already died by that time. By bombarding him with questions about money and real estate, they pressured Lucas that after the wedding, he would be obliged to help them with money. Lucas felt a terrible pressure and contempt towards him from them. Nobody cared about Lucas's own opinion, and he failed to impress his ex-wife's relatives. Sue's parents welcomed him warmly and kindly and made him feel at peace. The girl's mother asks if Lucas liked the food, and he enthusiastically praises it. The experience he shares during his fake date with Sue is completely different from what he had already experienced in his previous marriage. After the date, they said a warm goodbye to Sue's parents, who were pleased with the meeting. The girl's mother suddenly hints to her that she doesn't have to return home to spend the night. Lucas reflects that it was only the money that kept him from feeling awkward that evening, as his ex-wife had trampled his confidence. Mama Sue, laughing at the girl and her chosen one, asks them to give birth to a granddaughter for them first. Lucas sweats in embarrassment at the warm welcome. He hears Sue's parents reasoning that he is quite good for their daughter. After meeting the parents, Lucas and Sue go for a walk along the beach. Sue sheepishly bows before Lucas and begs for forgiveness. She feels very awkward about this evening, but Lucas immediately tries to calm her down. The girl replies that she saw his tense expression on his face due to bad memories from her parents' questions. Lucas realizes that Sue knows about his previous marriage and rushes to reassure her. His parents were kind to him, and the food was delicious, so he wasn't offended. But since the girl still regrets it, he suggests that she smooth things over with a walk to interesting places. Sue immediately begins to think about how to plan the best route. She is so immersed in her thoughts that she walks ahead of Lucas, and he calls her to slow down. However, he understands that Sue is simply very interested in the task she has received, and exhales with a laugh. Sue's mother's words about her being very stubborn are proven true. Suddenly, Sue's eyes turn to something on the beach, and she has an idea. She shows Lucas the place where she wants to take him. Looking at the place, Lucas feels awkward and chuckles nervously. Sue's interest turns to the fortune teller's tent located nearby on the beach. When the heroes decide to do some fortune telling, Sue gets a good result because she has good and pure energy. The fortune teller describes the girl from a positive side, both as a colleague and as a person. Sue is very happy that luck will be on her side throughout her life. However, the fortune teller points out that Sue recently missed a chance for something. The fortune teller says that she needs to be bolder and not hesitate. Lucas listens to their conversation with half an ear. He absolutely does not believe in these fortunes. The fortune teller says that Sue will still have another chance, and she must be strong and attentive. Lucas can barely contain his sigh at the fortune teller's words. However, Sue persuades the man to take part in the fortune telling. The girl thinks the fortune teller is trustworthy, but Lucas has no questions he would like to ask her. He tries to refocus his attention on Sue's interests, but the fortune teller's keen gaze is already fixed on him. The first thing the stranger tells about him concerns the times of famine that Lucas lived through, and this shocks him. He is stunned that the fortune teller knows about the poverty he lived in as a youth. However, Lucas, according to the fortune teller, was able to catch great luck, and she even envies him. The fortune teller advises Lucas to travel around the world and experience many things because this will allow him to further increase his luck. She assures him that Lucas can live the way he wants without looking back at the past, and he will succeed. Sue casually tries to find out how lucky Lucas is in his personal life. Lucas immediately becomes immersed in thoughts about the fortune teller's words and has no idea how he can change his lifestyle. However, he still found it pleasant to hear good predictions. When it comes time to pay for the fortune telling, Lucas is horrified by the large sum, although he has hundreds of times more in his account. Nevertheless, they leave the fortune teller in an elevated mood. Sue invites Lucas to eat conger eel with her at the market. She takes the still thoughtful man by the jacket and leads him behind her. Lucas doesn't know what to expect from the future yet, but he is starting to feel interested in it. In total, the heroes need 4 days to set up work in Busan, after which they return from their business trip. Lucas returns from a business trip to his abandoned apartment. He immediately rushes to the computer to check the Bitcoin rate. At first, he is horrified that he had not sold the assets earlier because he had lost 200 million won, but very soon he is earning 300 million won per hour. He breathes a sigh of relief but still doesn't understand what to do with the assets. He is mentally exhausted because he spent the whole weekend watching the Bitcoin rate. He is tormented by doubts about when to sell assets and whether it is worth doing so at all. But then the weekend passes and he goes back to work in the office. During lunch, he listens to colleagues discuss real estate investments. Lucas ultimately failed to rest properly and therefore was not focused enough. Now he has 40 billion won in his account and is wondering if the price of Bitcoin can go even higher. The colleagues are curious to know how his and Sue's trip to Busan went, and the man says it was calm. Lucas's older colleagues make friendly jokes about this. Lucas's colleagues return to discussing investments again. The manager that Lucas is seconding in command to says he is thinking about investing in Bitcoin, which makes Lucas sweat. Men think that they should have invested earlier, then they would have earned more. They decide to take a closer look at the possibility of investing in Bitcoin. Talk about cryptocurrency is becoming more and more lively. This time, Lucas focused his attention on the conversation. After hearing his colleagues' discussions, he decides that Bitcoin will continue to grow. This makes him consumed by greed, wanting to wait and not sell his assets yet. He continues to closely monitor the price changes of Bitcoin in the market. Lucas is shocked that the price of Bitcoin has dropped dramatically recently, and he has lost 6 billion won. During another break at work, he goes out to get some fresh air. The lost money haunts him. Lucas can't come to his senses. The amount he lost while waiting could have been his salary for 140 years of work. He immediately grabs his phone to check his assets. Lucas is overcome with anxiety and wonders whether he should sell his Bitcoins immediately. There's no need to be greedy anymore. He already has more than 30 billion won. However, at this moment, Lucas's colleagues approach him, wanting to know what he is doing. Lucas jumps in surprise, not expecting to be interrupted. Lucas's colleague smirks when he sees him researching the Bitcoin rate. He asks the man if he wants to invest in Bitcoins, and Lucas sweats nervously as he thinks of an answer. Colleagues are sure that since Lucas doesn't look well, there must be some problems with the investment. He does not name the actual amount, but his colleagues still support him and wish him good luck. Lucas sighed heavily, wondering if the price of Bitcoin would really go up any further. He asks his colleagues if they have seen the recent price collapse. The men look at each other, smile, and shake their heads. Lucas tries to find out what is the reason for such smiles, and one of his colleagues says that he does not follow the news. He shows the current Bitcoin rate, and Lucas is completely speechless. The price jumped up again and quite strongly. He even starts to cry from relief. His colleagues courageously support Lucas and convince him that the real takeoff is just beginning. It turns out that one of them bought Bitcoins and has already earned more than 1,000,001. However, Lucas is still terrified of falling again. The men's confidence, however, gives him hope that perhaps he can wait a little longer, and literally the next day, there is a sharp jump in the price of Bitcoin. This is shaking the world community, and everyone is talking about nothing but cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is becoming a store of value superior to gold, and now on yet another day the price of Bitcoin reaches an exorbitant figure. As a result, Lucas's current assets exceed 100 billion won. When a man sees the final amount, he starts to get hysterical. His heart is beating wildly, he is sweating, and he cannot breathe normally. So all Lucas can do is try to breathe calmly and cry. The man forces himself to calm down, reminds himself that it is not his money until he sells his assets. Now it's really time for him to make a decision. He can't put it off any longer. So Lucas is tormented by whether he should sell everything or wait further. Not accustomed to such sums, he is afraid of making the wrong move. Greed instantly takes hold of him, convincing him that he can earn more. Dark thoughts overwhelm Lucas. He wants to earn tens of billions just by sitting still. Therefore, submitting to these thoughts, he first decides to wait a little longer, but then his father's voice comes into his memory, the one who once convinced him that everything would work out. Lucas looks at a framed photograph of his father on the cabinet. His father once believed that buying new currency was his chance to become a good person and parent. When his father spent time gambling, he always promised to buy Lucas new clothes and a bag if he won big. He had been putting life on hold all this time, and Lucas realized it was time to make a change. The next day, Sue is busy in the office typing up important documents. She stretches with pleasure to relieve the fatigue of sitting in one place for a long time. Sue notes that Lucas never showed up at the office after they returned. The girl approaches one of the managers and presents the results of her work, and he thanks her for her work. The manager tells the girl that Lucas took a day off, so he is not in the office. Sue hopes that nothing serious happened to the man. Meanwhile, Lucas finally leaves the house and goes shopping. His first destination is a car dealership. The salon employee asks if the client has any wishes. Lucas feels awkward, but one car still catches his attention. It turns out to be a recently released white Ferrari model designed for both city driving and sports. Lucas decides to buy it, but when the salon employee starts talking about payment options, he interrupts him. He hands over a bank card, offering to make the purchase immediately because he plans to pay for his new car in one lump sum. The day before, Lucas sold his assets and earned 100 million won. Now Lucas is young and rich, a very pleased with himself man. However, he does not immediately understand what to do with such huge amounts of money. He decides to buy a car first, and now he will have to wait for it to be delivered from the showroom. Having spent a huge amount of money by the old standards, Lucas leaves the salon. He belatedly panics at the fact that he has spent almost 500 million won. Nevertheless, he took the first step towards pleasant and important spending. He once made this list when he could only dream of wealth, and the next item on this list is buying a luxury apartment. At the real estate agency, the employees actively welcome Lucas. Lucas says he needs a spacious apartment in a new building with a view of the Han River, since this is usually very expensive real estate. The agency employees are very interested in such a client, so Lucas and his realtor go to look at one of the options. It is a very large and newly built complex, and it will cost the hero 2 billion won to live in it. The realtor tells the man about the bonuses of the area, such as walking paths, gardens, and a swimming pool. Another big advantage of the residential complex is the gym. The apartment they are going to look at is on the 11th floor, and the realtor calls Lucas to follow him. As in many Korean apartments, the door is opened with a key card. Stepping inside, Lucas feels overwhelmed by the size of the apartment. It is so big that you can go jogging on it in the morning. The realtor tells the shocked client that the apartment is fully furnished, with furniture made from the highest quality materials. The girl shows 2 bathrooms, each larger than the apartment Lucas currently lives in. He jokes that there is no need to worry about mosquitoes or noise outside the window, and the realtor replies that this is one of the advantages of high-rise buildings. For Lucas, this place is so luxurious that he would be willing to live in less comfortable conditions. He opens the window and is speechless at the view of the river that opens up to him. It is so beautiful and impressive that the man admires it out loud. The realtor asks for the client's opinion and offers to show other options, but Lucas is satisfied with this apartment. He turns to the girl accompanying him and says that he will take this option. At the real estate agency, they prepare a contract for him, which Lucas signs immediately. Lucas is asked to pay a down payment and a brokerage commission to move in. However, the man takes out the suitcase he brought with him and replies that he will pay the entire amount at once. He opens the suitcase and specifies that the amount will be paid in cash. While the girls look in horror at the amount of cash, Lucas asks them to provide a check for the broker's commission. Meanwhile, in the office where Lucas works, the manager is flirting with his colleague in the storage room. He took her to a restaurant the day before and suggests they try a better place. He captivates the girl with his night look, smiling, and the girl gives in to his flirting. Suddenly, the flirting is interrupted by Sue bursting into the storage room and quickly approaching manager Dan. After waiting for Dan's girlfriend to move away a little, Sue moves closer. She comes very close, wanting to talk to the man about something important. The man is stunned by such an attack and does not understand what questions Sue could have for him. Sue looks menacingly at her colleague and asks if he knows where Dan lives. Dan doesn't understand why a popular girl like Sue needs Lucas's address. The girl replies that she wants to visit him because she is worried about Lucas's long absence from work. Dan can't help but wonder if Sue is so worried about all of her colleagues. However, he also doesn't know where Lucas lives. But he can call him and ask. He eventually contacts Lucas on Messenger, and he agrees to give them the address. Seeing such an active reaction, Dan wonders if Sue has become interested in his senior colleague. As Dan looks at her, Sue almost hums with joy at the upcoming meeting. After work, Sue and Dan, having bought some treats for Lucas, go to his house. Sue thinks about what Lucas's house might be like because she is very curious. She thinks that his apartment is small since he lives alone, and it is probably neat and clean. Dan is also trying to imagine what Lucas's apartment is like. He thinks it's minimalist because he still lives where he lived before they got married. They arrive in the area where Lucas lives, and it doesn't look like what they expected. Once inside the apartment, Dan and Sue recoil in shock and horror. Lucas thanks them for coming and apologizes for having to use the excuse of feeling unwell at work. The apartment they find themselves in turns out to be dirtier and more musty than Dan and Sue thought. However, Lucas is not worried about the fact that it is not tidy, as he is preparing to move. Dan winces in horror as the apartment looks more like a warehouse than a home, and stinks badly. Lucas explains that it has nothing to do with the house, but rather that there is a sewer leak nearby. Sue touches the wall with her fingers, which is heavily covered in black mold. Tears well up in the girl's eyes at the thought that he had lived in such an apartment alone all this time. Dan watches surreptitiously as Sue trembles with emotion, so he decides to help Lucas with the move and help pack the boxes. Sue supports this idea. Lucas clarifies if everything is okay because the heroes can get dirty, but for them, it is nothing. The hero is grateful to his colleagues for their concern and help. They walk out into the parking lot, and Dan looks at one of the cars in surprise. Of course, his attention is focused on the latest Ferrari model. He doesn't understand what such a luxurious car is doing in this place. Dan thinks he'd like to take a closer look at her, but he feels awkward in front of his colleagues. Noticing his interest, Lucas calmly approaches the Ferrari and offers to put the boxes in it. Dan and Sue are speechless at the unexpectedness of this proposal. At first, Dan thinks that Lucas rented this car for the move, and when the hero says that this is his car, Dan breaks out in a sweat from shock. The heroes think that Lucas has come into an inheritance. Otherwise, they cannot explain where he got a 400 million won car from. However, all Dan can think about is how much he wants to ride it. Lucas invites his assistants to look at the apartment they are moving to. Dan and Sue are certainly on board with this, as they are very curious to see Lucas's new place of residence. However, there is only one passenger seat in the car, and only one person can travel with him. Sue is sure that she will have to travel separately because she is the youngest. However, when she is about to propose, Dan says that he will go separately. The girl is surprised by this offer, but Dan says that he still needs to pick up the car. He walks to the car, promising to follow Lucas and Sue. However, he cries because he also wants to ride in a Ferrari, and he made this decision to give Sue time with someone she likes. Lucas turns to Sue, saying that this is the first time they've been alone since their trip to Busan. Sue reveals that her parents have identified Lucas as the man she plans to marry soon. In response, Lucas teases the girl, wondering whether he should play the role of her husband, which makes Sue blush. Sue is a little hesitant, not knowing how to broach the subject that worries her. Lucas watches her awkward attempts and chuckles good-naturedly. The girl waves her hand, not wanting to ruin the moment with awkward questions, although she is very curious to know more about Lucas's ex-wife. The man thanks her for the sensitivity and care that she and Dan show by not asking difficult questions and being patient. Blushing, Sue replies that she will definitely ask questions when Lucas is ready. She tries to find out where he is moving, but Lucas wants to keep the intrigue. At this time, a telephone conversation takes place between the director of the company and an unknown woman. She says that she is sorting through old things and she is looking at photographs. One of these photographs shows Maria and Lucas during their wedding. The woman's fingers squeeze the photograph aggressively, crumpling it. The girl speaking on the phone turns out to be Maria herself, Lucas's ex-wife. It's been 6 months since the divorce, and she decides to return to work in the office where Lucas works. Lucas's new car races through the streets, sparkling with its cleanliness and well-groomed appearance. It's led by Dan, who Lucas allowed to do this, and he's so happy he's crying. Lucas warns him to be careful not to kill them both, but Dan is too happy to hear him. He has a question for Lucas, and wants to know if he can ask it. To Lucas's surprise, Dan asks him how the man feels about Sue. Lucas doesn't understand why his colleague is asking such sudden questions, but Dan says he's just curious. Lucas doesn't see anything fishy in the question and considers what he can say. He reflects on how Sue is kind, capable, caring, and overall a good girl. Dan tries to find out if that's all, but Lucas doesn't know what else his colleague wants to hear. At work, during a break, senior colleagues pounce on him with questions about his new car. Everyone noticed the Ferrari in the parking lot and assumed that Lucas had gotten rich from investments. Lucas says he increased his capital by reinvesting his earnings and mortgaging his property. Lucas's colleagues, on the contrary, lost part of their funds in bitcoins. That's why they turned to Lucas for advice as a more successful investor. The men are confident that Lucas is well-versed in investment matters and is making new plans. However, Lucas doesn't know what to tell them, whether to make up a legend or tell the whole truth. Lucas replies that to invest successfully, you need to have the heart of a beast. He understands that this question could confuse his colleagues, and still decides to tell the truth. However, the colleagues understand the advice in their own way, deciding that psychology is important in this matter, not technology. The manager asks if Lucas invests in other types of cryptocurrencies, and the man says he has invested in 2 more. After purchasing a house and a car, he reinvested the rest of his assets into cryptocurrency. However, he is afraid to give advice, lest he be held responsible for the outcome. Lucas's cryptocurrencies of choice were Ripple and Ethereum. They are brand new, so his colleagues were curious about the reason for this choice, and Lucas says he thinks they are reliable. Ripple supports international transactions between banks, and Ethereum supports transactions using blockchain technology. Lucas believes that these are the cryptocurrencies that will attract the attention of the media and investors. Lucas has really done some serious research into new cryptocurrencies. At this time, Sue is tidying herself up in the ladies' room when she thinks about Lucas. She hears other girls talking. They discuss gossip about Lucas and the Ferrari he bought. No one believes that he is so rich. Sue is not surprised that rumors have already spread throughout the company. One of the girls claims that Lucas took out loans to buy the car, and many also discuss that he gambles and likes to drink. One of the girls is disappointed. She had no idea that Lucas was such an unworthy person. Sue, not wanting to hear any more of Lucas's slander, approaches the girls. They sweat from Sue's abrupt interruption of their conversation. Sue is surrounded by a dark and threatening energy, and she really wants to know who is spreading such rumors about Lucas. At this time, Lucas's ex-wife comes to the office where he works. Maria tries to find out from the manager, who recognizes her where Lucas is. The man tries to discourage her and says that Maria's ex-husband is not there. He offers to pass messages to Lucas if the girl wants. But then Lucas enters the office with boxes full of documents. It wobbles slightly, and the boxes are leaning dangerously, threatening to fall. Maria holds the boxes that are ready to collapse, and Lucas thanks her. And then he realizes who helped him. He recognizes the woman in front of him and feels the first wave of panic. Maria warns Lucas to be careful in the office. She wants to know how her ex-husband is doing, but Lucas doesn't believe the woman for a second. Memories of their honeymoon come flooding back to his mind when Maria scolded him for a long time for booking the wrong hotel, one that was unsuitable for her. Lucas tries to justify himself by saying that he chose this hotel based on reviews from other guests, but the girl is still unhappy. Maria does not want to listen to him. Throughout their marriage, the girl humiliated him and made him guilty of everything, convincing him that she had shown him a favor with their marriage. That's why Maria is sure that she still has such power over her ex-husband. However, Lucas is not the same as before, even if their meeting did throw him off balance for a while. Maria says that she wants to give him some documents, and the man sighs long and heavily. Then he puts the boxes on the floor with a loud bang, which makes Maria flinch. Colleagues turn to look at them, trying to understand what is happening. Looking calmly into Maria's eyes as he never did before, Lucas takes the documents from her, and then he leaves, pretending that this meeting did not bother him at all. Maria gets angry at this reaction and bites her lips, trying not to yell at the man in front of her colleagues. She leaves the office, remembering that before, Lucas couldn't even look her straight in the eye. But after the divorce, he changed. So much. She's angry that Lucas bought a Ferrari after the divorce, and if she had been patient in the marriage, she could have taken the car. But now that she has missed this chance, Maria wants to create a new one. She returns to her office, in tears, looking very unhappy. Colleagues immediately rush to her to support her after a meeting with her ex-husband. Maria immediately portrays Lucas as a monster, lying that he yelled and humiliated her. The head of the department silently watches this performance. She sighs, not sharing her colleagues' worries. She sees Maria's pretense. Meanwhile, Lucas is quietly working in his office, thinking about what happened. He knew that sooner or later Maria would return to work after their separation. He wondered how he would feel if he met the girl again, but it turned out not to be that bad. The manager comes up behind him and asks if Lucas is sure everything is okay. He calls the younger one to the roof, where his colleague immediately attacks him with hugs. He thanks Lucas for the advice that allowed him to make good profits. Lucas doesn't understand the reason, and his colleague suggests checking the quotes. It turns out that Ripple has grown by 70% in price this morning. Lucas wonders how much money he now has uncounted, and he tries to count it. It turns out that Lucas's assets already amount to 98 million won. Colleagues, having invested in Ripple, earned several of their annual salaries. The manager thanks Lucas for everything he has done for them, but Lucas believes that it is their own responsibility. Colleagues are trying to find out how much he himself invested in Ripple. Lucas decides not to tell the truth, but to make up something credible. So, he says that he invested 1 billion won each in Ripple and Ethereum. Everyone is surprised at how much Lucas has invested and earned from it. The hero refuses to give advice because investing is a personal responsibility. However, he himself says that he will not sell Ripple for now, but will wait a little longer. Rumors that Lucas has hit the jackpot with cryptocurrency quickly spread throughout the company. Lucas's success at such a young age is the talk of the office. People also talk about Lucas's colleagues following his example and investing successfully. However, recently someone has been spreading bad rumors that he beat his ex-wife and took money from her. Maria overhears her ex's colleagues deciding that someone is spreading bad rumors specifically to defame Lucas. She is furious that her plan is failing and people are defending Lucas instead of vilifying him. In her irritation, she almost gives away her presence and hurries away. All that remained where she had stood was a crumpled drink cup. It's lunchtime, and the heroes go on break. Sue sits thoughtfully by the window in the cafe, looking out. The window as if waiting for someone. The men present in the cafe stare at her and openly admire her. However, Sue looks very nervous and agitated. She turns pale. Dan appears in the cafe and calls the girl by name. He is carrying a tray with their drinks. He asks how long Sue waited, but she says she just arrived. Dan called her to this cafe to tell her something special about Lucas. Dan wants to ask her a question first, and then discuss the rest. He asks Sue what she thinks about recent rumors. About Lucas's gambling addiction and cruelty to his wife. Sue exclaims sharply that all these rumors are ridiculous and she does not believe them at all. Someone is spreading them maliciously. This answer satisfies Dan, and he decides to ask the girl something else. Finally, Dan asks Sue if she is in love with Lucas. This makes Sue blush deeply and becomes speechless with embarrassment. She screams and stutters, trying to dissuade Dan from his words. Dan chuckles and asks the girl not to pretend. He understands everything and wants to help. Dan tells the girl to go to Lucas right now and confess her feelings. At this time, Lucas is on a break again and receives hugs from happy colleagues. Trusting Lucas's instincts, his colleagues decided to wait with the sale of assets. And they were right. Lucas is not very happy that the number of people thanking him has increased significantly. Colleagues begin to thank him because thanks to Lucas's advice, they were able to solve their financial difficulties. After rumors of Lucas hitting the jackpot, most of the company's employees got involved in the cryptocurrency game. Soon, everyone who trusted Lucas and invested in Ripple received huge profits. Colleagues call Lucas a financial god and confess their love to him. One of his colleagues tries to figure out how much money Lucas has earned, and he tries to get out of it. Lucas currently has 578 billion won in his account. In fact, for the same amount of money as Lucas, you could buy almost any company. When Lucas invested in new cryptocurrencies, he thought their prices would rise. However, he could not even imagine that in a month the situation could become so crazy. The hero counted on human greed, but growth was still too fast. The girls from the office also join their colleagues to get investment advice from Lucas. The hero replies that investing right now is a bit risky. The price has gone up too much lately, which means it could fall too much. The girls thank him for the advice and ask what other investment options there are. Maria is furious about the active attention paid to her ex-husband. Out of frustration, she locks herself in the restroom and kicks the trash can. Maria is angry that everyone is praising someone she considers a fool. The girl's pride is hurt, and she comes up with a plan to use Lucas. She wants to destroy Lucas's reputation and take over his money. Lucas calmly studies the chats on his phone and sees that everyone is also discussing cryptocurrency. However, suddenly he receives a notification that shocks him. Maria writes to him, asking how things are as if nothing happened between them. She writes that she was wrong and then invites him on a date. Lucas wants to delete the useless correspondence, but then Sue calls him. He immediately picks up the phone, quickly interested in the reason for the call. Sue, worried, says that nothing special happened. She sits at home in her pajamas, hugging a stuffed animal, and replies that she just wanted to talk to Lucas. He asks if Sue herself is resting, and the girl says that she recently returned from training. Lucas plans to go shopping the next day, because he threw out his old furniture. Sue is very keen to join him on this shopping trip. The man hesitates to answer, which makes his colleague worry. However, after just a few seconds, he makes an appointment with her during the day at the shopping center. They say goodnight to each other, and then Sue screams into her pillow in delight, trying to come to her senses at the wrong time. The girl's memory flashes back to her conversation with Dan and how he pushed her to confess. Sue isn't sure she can do it, but she wants to try her best. The next day comes, and Lucas rushes to the mall. He arrives early enough that it makes him sigh heavily. He is already thinking about waiting for Sue in some cafe, but suddenly Sue calls out to him. She also arrives early in such a hurry to see Lucas. She literally beams with joy, and men turn to look at her. Lucas notices that the girl calls him informally at work, and he gives permission for this, after which Sue calls him to go inside the shopping center. The girl secretly watches her companion and admires him. She is happy that Lucas agreed to take her with him for a walk. The two of them go to the mall to do the shopping that Lucas had planned. At this time, the forgotten Maria is waiting for Lucas in the cafe and is furious that he is late, although he did not plan to come at all. There are a lot of people in the shopping center, and the employees greet Lucas and Sue politely when they arrive. The girl notes that this is the first time she has been alone with him outside of work. She imagines that it could be a date with Lucas. Suddenly, Lucas draws the girl's attention to something, inviting her to look. A man chooses new blankets for himself and finds a very soft one. Sue is pleased to see her companion so excited during their shopping trip. This is the first time Lucas has seen such soft and cozy blankets because he is used to using only thick and heavy blankets. So delighted, he decides to buy 3 sets of blankets at once. Before he has time to make a purchase, he already finds something new. This time, Lucas's attention is drawn to a new cordless vacuum cleaner. Then there is a refrigerator, in the door of which there is a touchscreen. The washer and dryer are also an important interior element in Lucas's new home. The hero's attention is also drawn to the sofa, the angle of which can be adjusted. For the first time in his life, Lucas spends money without thinking, and it makes him happy. The man admits that the mall is an interesting place when you're rich. Lucas feels like he enabled a cheat code in a game when he was a kid. The hero decides to ask Sue if she finds it boring to go shopping with him, but the girl is delighted. However, besides the fun, Sue feels a lot of strange feelings, mainly because Dan said that she had to confess her feelings to Lucas. The girl realizes that she really can't hesitate forever. She wants to try to tell Lucas everything, but when she starts to confess, Lucas interrupts her. They shudder with embarrassment and look into each other's eyes. Sue offers to let the man speak first, but Lucas cedes the right to her. However, the girl still persuades him to speak first. What Lucas said makes Sue stare at him in surprise. She even asks again if Lucas really meant what he said. All this time, Maria, who was sitting in the cafe waiting for Lucas, clenches her fists in rage because he did not come to the meeting. During another break during the working day in the office, employees rejoice at the growth of the Ripple rate. The men loudly encourage themselves and each other. Lucas's company is looking at this from the outside, noting that there are even more people investing in cryptocurrency. One of the shouters is a man who previously derided cryptocurrency as a form of gambling. However, in addition to the rise in the price of Ripple, the price of Ethereum is also rising, so Lucas is very happy. The man thinks that the huge profits from cryptocurrency can turn even those who criticized it into fanatics. Greed, according to Lucas, unites people, but no one knows the result. In a lucky moment, investments can bring huge profits, but if the price falls, a person may lose everything down to the last one. Lucas admits that he is no exception, and he too has to obey these rules. His father also taught him that winning at the gaming table does not mean getting money, but you can receive money at a completely different time. Lucas believes that you need to overcome greed and wake up because you get money when you get up from the gaming table. In work chats, they discuss investments and thank Lucas for valuable advice. This infuriates his colleague Jack, who has long considered cryptocurrency an unworthy business. He thinks that Lucas was just lucky and that he doesn't really understand anything. Jack believes that he is the only one doing real investing. He is happy that he earned 100 million won in a month and believes that his life will soon turn around. The man dreams of buying a luxury apartment with a view of the Han River and a sports car. Jack also wants to marry Sue, with whom he has long been in love. In the chat, Lucas makes an important announcement regarding cryptocurrency. He says that he is going to sell everything. A senior colleague thinks this is stupid because Lucas could earn much more. Jack aggressively types messages in the chat saying that what Lucas said is complete nonsense and that no one should sell cryptocurrency now. He believes that if Lucas decides to pass up such an opportunity, he is a complete amateur. Lucas answers some of the messages without trying to persuade anyone, after which he puts the phone aside and thinks about his next steps. Now he wants to meet with his boss to discuss an important issue. He heads to work at the office, ready for a serious conversation. The man goes up to the desired floor and approaches his manager. He asks if the manager has a minute to talk. The manager notices the bundle of papers in Lucas's hands. He understands that Lucas wants to tell him something really important. He sighs heavily, thinking that the conversation will be about resignation. So he calls Lucas to go somewhere else, to the roof, where they usually spend their breaks. The manager happily congratulates Lucas on his increased wealth. After all, Lucas was already rich, and now he was supposed to become even richer. The manager himself earned enough money to drink for the rest of his life. He decides to push Lucas to talk about what's bothering him. Lucas clutches the application papers in his hands, nervous to start the conversation. The manager doesn't want to say goodbye to a good employee who also gives good advice. Lucas asks for a 2-week vacation and asks if it is possible to take it. The news that Lucas has a leave application in his hands and not a resignation letter pleases the manager. The manager thought that since Lucas had earned so much, he could already retire, but the hero himself is not ready for this yet. He didn't even think about quitting. He recalls meeting Sue and telling her that he was planning to go to the States for about 2 weeks. He thinks about what to do with the money he earns and decides that he needs to gain more experience and knowledge. Lucas wants to take the opportunity to study in America for a while. Because of his confession, Sue hesitates to confess her feelings to Lucas. She just wants Lucas to have a good time on his trip. The manager agrees to sign Lucas's vacation papers. Lucas asks his older colleague if he can continue living like this. He made a lot of money on cryptocurrency, but doesn't know what to do next. He doesn't have a hobby or a dream because he didn't have time to think about such things before. Lucas realizes that he has always envied people who have a dream, for those who have professionally performed singing on stage and enjoyed music, for those who have been involved in sports since their youth and built their careers on it, to those who spent their time painting because these people had dreams and passion that he did not have. The manager says that not all people can have a dream, and not having a dream is just as normal as being an ordinary person. Lucas had never thought about it and didn't know that it could be normal. The manager tells Lucas that as a child, he dreamed of becoming a professional golfer. His parents supported him because they enjoyed golf. That's why the man, with the support of his parents, prepared to become a professional from the age of 10. He had injured himself more than once, and his hands were covered in bruises and calluses. But as a child, it was enough for him to just hold a stick in his hands. The manager was happy as a child thanks to his dream. However, soon enough, he found out what was behind his dream. He learned that a lot of money was spent on tuition and field fees, which was ruining their family. As a result, the man gave up his dream but now lives quite well. Now he has another dream, and he is striving to make it come true. Now he just wants to go to a baseball game with his family. He advises Lucas not to get too hung up on his dream, as he can achieve everything he wants in his lifetime. The manager advises Lucas to enjoy life and do whatever he wants. Lucas listens to his senior colleague's words with respect and draws conclusions for himself. He decides to move step by step to formulate new dreams for himself. The manager finally decides to ask Lucas himself a question. He is very interested in how much money he actually made. He promises to keep the information a secret. To avoid answering directly, Lucas asks how much an apartment in the Gangnam area currently costs. Having finally figured out how much it came out to, he whispers the final number into the manager's ear. The manager is so shocked by the answer that he breaks out in a sweat. He asks incredulously if Lucas really has such means. The manager smiles at how ridiculously rich Lucas is. After all, Lucas's current assets could be thought of as 1,000 apartments in Gangnam. With his leave, Lucas sets off on his American journey. The last time the man flew to a seminar in Germany, but that was a long time ago. Now he can afford comfortable conditions for the flight. He is warmly greeted by the flight attendants, and Lucas is delighted by such respectful treatment. He only had experience flying in economy class, which was cramped and uncomfortable. Now he is flying first class for the first time, sitting in a comfortable seat and able to relax. Suddenly he hears a female voice from the side discussing design issues. In the next row sits a beautiful brunette who is talking on the phone about the development of the automobile industry in Korea. The girl notices that Lucas is watching her. He waves his hand to the girl in greeting without any embarrassment. His neighbor ends her business conversation with a request to send documents by email. In case of emergency, she apologizes to Lucas for talking on the phone in the salon, but the man is understanding. Having studied Lucas with her eyes, the stranger finds him quite interesting. She hands Lucas a business card and introduces herself. As the CEO of an automobile company, her name is Chloe. Lucas is surprised that Chloe is so young and already an executive director. He introduces himself to the girl but says that he did not bring business cards. The man's position puzzles Chloe because she didn't think that an ordinary employee could afford to travel first class. Lucas explains almost immediately that his capital now depends mainly on investments. You want part 2? Write the secret word in the comments, Bitcoin. That way I'll know you've seen this video to the end. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and put a like. See you later, and bye-bye.